One thing that's been affecting motorists all over the world, but especially here in the UK, are ever lower speed limits. We're seeing 20-mile-an-hour zones springing up in towns and urban areas, and general roads that were 60 miles an hour have been reduced to 50 miles an hour. There's a big safety campaign to clamp down on speed, and in this video though, we're going to look at some of the specifics, the common misconceptions that people have about speeding, speeding fines and speeding penalties. We're going to discuss some of the areas where a speeding penalty might be cancelled, and also how to avoid a speeding penalty in the first place just by understanding what the law is and how it's enforced. As a responsible YouTuber, I can't endorse speeding or driving recklessly on the roads. And if I were to publicly say that, I could be completely cancelled, my channel could be removed, I could certainly face penalties. And we really do have to toe the line. But there are some common misconceptions and misunderstandings that are leading people to breaking the law and ending up with big fines or big penalties just because they were relying on one of these commonly held myths or misunderstandings that they've heard regurgitated by their mates down the pub. Now, onto a big myth that I often see regurgitated and people tell me. They say you're allowed to do 10% plus 2 miles an hour. So the theory then is that on a motorway at 70 miles an hour, you can get away with doing 77 10% plus 2, 79. But this is only guidance from the National Police Chiefs Council. If you were stopped for speeding, and the police officer asked you what speed you were going at, and you said something like, I was only doing 72 miles an hour, but I know that you're not allowed to book me unless I'm doing 10% plus 2 miles an hour over the speed limit, you've just admitted to speeding. 1 mile an hour over the speed limit is sufficient cause to issue a speeding ticket or speeding notice. And if you've just admitted that, then you've not really got a leg to stand on. You're asking for trouble. So be very careful what you say to a policeman that stops you, and don't give them excuses when they ask you what the speed you were doing. It's tricky, isn't it? When they ask you what speed you're doing, you either say, I don't know, so you're not driving with due care and attention, or you can give the exact speed and get yourself into trouble, or you can just ask the officer, what speed do you think I was travelling at? And I'll tell you if that was accurate or not, and just get the policeman to indicate what he said that your speed was. And you can say, no, I wasn't. Obviously, if you wind up the policeman, he's going to look for every opportunity to book you. And it's best to avoid this situation in the first place. So don't assume that you're going to get away with 10% plus 2 miles an hour, because that's not the case. And in some areas, particularly Wales, they have an almost zero tolerance enforcement when it comes to speed limits. The speed enforcement is now very digital. It's very hard to get out of a speeding ticket that's been issued by a camera. The cameras are calibrated, they're very precise, they're very efficient. And another myth that people often say is that I didn't see the camera flash, so I've not got a speeding ticket, I've got away with it. But a lot of modern cameras don't flash when they capture you. Everything is done digitally. They use infrared sensors. HADX3 and SPECS cameras particularly do not flash when they record an offence, and you'll just get a fixed penalty notice through the post. Many drivers claim that in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, part of their attention is soaked up with staring at the speedometer, and there's certainly a basis for that argument. If you're watching your speedo, you're not concentrating on the road around you. Recommendations from the government's own speed awareness course is to drop down into second or third gear in these 20 and 30 mile an hour zones. So the engine RPM is much higher, and it makes it harder to speed in these areas. Now, I don't know about you, but is that going to have an impact on pollution because you're driving at higher RPM? It'll certainly benefit the engine. You're not pootling around at low RPM lugging the engine, so I don't think there's going to be any long-term damage to our cars. But the whole argument for having a 20-mile-an-hour limit for environmental reasons seems to be negated when this specific government guidance is applied. Now, the reality is that the speedometer in our car is not accurate. There's quite a big leeway in some cases, and it can vary. If you've put bigger wheels and increased the rolling diameter of the tyre, even if you've put new tyres on compared to old tyres, that can have a bearing on how accurate the speed is, because it calculates the number of rotations and works works out distance travelled divided by time. The car then has a speed to show you. And in most cases, your speedo will underread significantly. EU regulations stipulate that manufacturers are not allowed to produce a speedometer that underreads your current speed. And they also can't overread by 10% plus 6 miles an hour. And if that was followed to the letter, to the extreme, potentially at 60 miles an hour, your speedo is showing 72 miles an hour. The reality is somewhat different, and actually you can measure the accuracy of your speedo with a satnav, and satnavs tend to be more accurate, particularly as speed increases. And you'll see that your satnav maybe indicates 70 miles an hour and your speedo is showing 74, for example, or 77. In my experience, most speedos have been round about 10% out in terms of the actual speed the car is traveling at. So next time we're worried about driving over the speed limit in a 20 zone or a 30 zone, we may actually be there already. The buffer that our car already has could be keeping us on the safe side of that. Can we get out of speeding tickets? Well, there are legitimate excuses that we can use to get out of a speeding ticket, but basically if we've been speeding, we should just take the rap for it and accept the fine or accept the speed awareness course penalty and just go and attend that and turn over a new leaf and don't speed ever again. If the signage is not visible or it's not correctly posted and the driver was not reasonably aware of the speed limit in force, that could be an argument against a speeding ticket. It's only fair, really, if the speed sign has been defaced, if it's come down, if it's covered in foliage and you genuinely didn't see it, you can argue that you weren't aware of that speed limit that was in force at the time. A lot of people fall back on the speed camera was not calibrated. I want to see a calibration certificate, because that used to be quite a valid excuse. If the equipment wasn't calibrated, they can't prove that you were going at the set speed. Now, modern speed cameras will take 2 photos and there'll be markings on the road, and it's very easy to calculate the actual speed you were traveling from the physical, mechanical photographs that were taken, and each photo will be time stamped and they'll know exactly how many of those bars you've crossed over. We'll know to a fair certainty how much speed you were doing over and above the speed limit. And police are on top of this. They know that people are going to appeal if the speed camera equipment is not correctly calibrated, so they keep on top of it. They follow quite a stringent routine of calibrating all the equipment used to measure speed, whether it's a handheld camera or it's fixed position roadside camera. Now, there is a rule that the NIP, the Notice of Intended Prosecution, has to be delivered to you within 14 days. And if it isn't, it's not enforceable. But often postal delays, or if there was a leasing company involved and there was a bit of a delay getting that to you, it's a very weak excuse, and I certainly wouldn't rely on that in court. So let's keep an eye on the speed that we're travelling at. We certainly don't want to get speeding tickets and speeding penalties. And with the automatic enforcement and the cameras that are proliferating all over our roads, it's becoming more and more likely that offences are going to be recorded and tickets issued and fines posted. We can still enjoy our cars within the speed limits when conditions allow, on a nice, safe, open, twisty road, for example. We need to maintain full control of our car at all time. And if we really do want to enjoy the car, then let's take it on the track. Let's book some proper track time and drive the car at the limit in a safe environment where it's safe to do so, and just explore what our car is capable of doing. And I would rather explore those limits on the track than make a mistake on the road, because on the road it's going to cause damage to me, other people, other people's property, and it's probably going to be quite an expensive mistake. Whereas on a track, often all that happens is you just spin out into a safety runoff area, and there's very little consequences for misjudging a bend or misjudging your cornering speed. I hope you found this video useful. Please boot the like button if you have. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so, because I'd hate you to miss out on the great videos we've got planned, and I've got this video lined up and this playlist that you should find really interesting. See you in these next videos.